Good morning, and welcome to Ask the Expert. I'm Joe Taylor. This morning, another in the ongoing series of programs presented by the Northwest Regional Key Program for Quality Early Learning. The program, through the Northwest Institute of Research, oversees a grant from the Office of Child Development and Early Learning at the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services and the Department of Education. The goal of the program is to improve the outcomes for young children as they prepare for school. John Pozza is a community partner specialist for the program, and he's here with us throughout the entire series. Well, John, it's just you and me today. Time to catch up maybe on some things and talk about some things going on. And as we record this program here in mid-April, it's National Week of the Young Child. And of course, our concerns for young children is year-round. But what specifically is the meaning and purpose of the week, and what events, by the time people hear this, will have transpired?
Oh, good morning, Joe. Well, Week of the Young Child really is pretty much a federal initiative. It's also observed here in Pennsylvania, where we focus on the importance of providing a quality learning environment for young children, preschoolers, particularly focusing on literacy. And we invite community members, folks that are involved in preschools, to host guest readings of the Pennsylvania One Book, which is a program also that is now in its 10th year of selecting a children's book that's representative of, for more or less, the book of the year for children.
And we had the author of that on, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
We had Greg Pritzoli, who is the author of this year's PA One Book, Number One Sam. So we ask, there's an actual registration site for folks in the community to volunteer to go out and read to young children wherever they would like to go read, primarily at either libraries or preschools. And then we ask for those organizations to also volunteer to be a host site. So the primary focus is on literacy and getting children to read, and getting parents and community members to read to children. It's a great activity. I obviously participated in that program. I just love, that's one of my favorite things to do, is read to young children. And so that's part of it. But it's also, besides incorporating the PA One Book and the reading, is organizations put on programs for children. A lot of programs can be at the mall. It's sharing of resources, doing activities with kids at these children's and kids' fair. And pretty much every county organizes some type of activity. And one of the things that the Pennsylvania Key does is that they provide $100 in free resources to organizations if they at least host one activity for children. They promote that activity by sending it to the Pennsylvania Key, and they in turn receive resources, and it could be basically a literacy type of resources and things that can help parents as well as preschools in working with children.
A new administration took over Harrisburg a few months ago, and usually a Democratic administration can be expected to be very pro-policies that promote things like early childhood learning. Is that true so far for the new Wolf administration?
Absolutely is. Of course, the governor, now by the time this airs, we won't know whether we will have the budget approved for the 2015-16 fiscal year. But Governor Wolf, at least in his proposed budget, is actually very much in support of quality early learning. And as a matter of fact, in his proposal, he proposes doubling the amount of funding for pre-K counts. So it's $120 million that he's proposed. So it's basically doubling that budget for pre-K counts, which we know is a very, very successful. It's one of Pennsylvania's highest quality preschool programs. So the idea is to get more money out there for applicant organizations to apply for this and to actually have additional opportunities for parents to enroll their kids in their neighborhood in a pre-K count setting. But generally speaking, Head Start, Head Start is primarily funded on the federal level.
Right.
although we do have what's called state supplemental funding for Head Start sites. And I think that the governor has proposed increasing that as well. And for most of the other, we have not really seen any decrease in his proposed budget. But, as always, there's always a contention in all kinds of areas, particularly in the education arena, which is the state has continually looked for avenues to be able to fund education in some other way. So
I just, and I'm just speaking personally, and I think you'll agree, I just don't see how people cannot see that investing in young children is a great investment for the future.
I totally agree with you, Joe, and certainly we know the data that's out there. We know how important education is in today's society, and even from the standpoint, and sometimes there's this division, which I don't know why it's there often among parents many parents, whether it's an elitist attitude or what have you, but they almost feel like their child has to go to a four-year college or college in some way in order to be successful. And of course, we're seeing so much growth in the technical industry, in the technical field, where technical education has really come alive with all the nuances and the demands for those skills in the workforce. So I know that that's slowly changing, but I just feel that's still education. Mm-hmm. And the bottom line is whether a child goes to a four-year college, a two-year college, for an associate's degree or a technical degree, any education is only going to help people today. Another change in Harrisburg has been at the end of December. We had this lady on the program, Dr. Barb Sandbergs. She had been the Deputy Secretary of the Office of Child Development Early Learning, and she was obviously a very strong advocate for these issues. What will her departure mean to the cause? Well, of course, she was appointed by Governor Corbett in his administration, and as typically happens when there's a change in administration through the governor's office, they handpick their cabinet people. And so we were really not sure there for a while because Barb actually was doing such a great job as a Deputy Secretary of the Office of Child Development and Early Learning that we thought that there was maybe going to be a chance that she would stay on. And, it's not to say that hasn't happened when there's been changes in administration. Right, yeah. Typically happens when there's a change and there's maybe a governor from the same political party, that often that same person will stay. But of course, now we're in a Democratic administration, and we just, found out that, she will be leaving Office of Child Development. I had a great relationship with her, was a tremendous asset. But in the interim, and for all I know, by the time this airs, right, we may have a new deputy secretary, but the interim deputy is Tracy Campanini is her name. And Tracy is actually from Western Pennsylvania. And she has been an associate, and she's been involved in the Office of Child Development, very, very capable. And I think we'll be fine. And but, of course, until we have a new person named, we'll see what happens. I thought it might be a good time to kind of back up and get into definition and talk a bit about Keystone STARS. Exactly what is it? What do kids learn? What are the elements of it? I think let's kind of touch base. We've gone off deep into the topic, but sometimes it's good just to go back and define what it is we're really talking about here. Right. And I think we touched on it briefly in one of our first shows that we did back in September. But for those who maybe had not heard the program, Keystone STARS is generally the quality improvement program for early childhood, preschool education to prepare kids for kindergarten. It is a quality rating system per se. So when I say rating system, we have sites who participate in Keystone STARS that can be anywhere from a star 1 to a star 4. So if you think pretty much like as individuals are traveling and they're looking for a quality hotel or a quality restaurant, they have stars aligned with them, and the more stars, the better the quality, right, sure, theoretically. That's the case with Keystone STARS. But in terms of how it's operated, The thing is, when someone comes into Keystone Stars, each star level, the responsibilities of that childcare and preschool.
Okay, let's back up a little bit. Okay, you say when someone comes into it, we're talking now the someone being who? A child care provider, right?
Right, a child care provider.
Right.
And there are 3 types of child care providers in the state of Pennsylvania. There's the family providers who operate in their own homes, and they can provide care for up to 6 children, okay? Then there are the group providers. A group provider is often, that is done in someone's own home as well, but they can care for up to 12 unrelated children. And then there are centers, okay? And a center is operated in a separate location, and based on the certification regulations for size and so forth, it's not limited,
right?
Yeah, to how many kids that they can care for. So Keystone Stars primarily is a voluntary program, and regardless of what level, normally when someone enrolls, when a child care enrolls, they are then designated at a Star 1 level. But the standards of Keystone Stars, regardless of the level, are broken down into 4 areas. The staff directors' qualifications in terms of their education, as well as the staff themselves, the hours that they need in early childhood education every year, as well as their educational background. The second area is the learning program. The learning program deals with exactly what they're doing during the day with the children, okay? It deals with their curriculum, lesson planning, observations that they're doing on the children, and assessments, and the sharing of this information with parents. That's pretty much what the learning program deals with. The third area is their partnerships with families and communities. So as we often hear, it takes a village to raise a child. How involved are those parents and community members in the activities going on with that particular child care? It's very important that there be a lot of involvement, a lot of activities, so that people can share in that. And then the last part is leadership and management. So how well, from a business standpoint, is the child care being run in terms of their budgeting, in terms of the benefits being provided to their employees, the work hours, the pay, things that are more typical of any kind of business.
Can I ask you this then, John? Let's say that there already is, and I know there are probably hundreds of these people within our listening area, a woman, I assume, who is running her own daycare business, okay? And she is not, she hasn't been certified Keystone Stars yet. How does she go about doing that, and what kind of process is there to make sure that she's hitting it on all 4 of these criteria?
Great question, Joe. That's one of our biggest challenges, and that's probably one of our most important things that we work on is outreach and being able to bring more and more providers into Keystone Stars. So we do a lot of things from a recruitment standpoint. We just had 2 of them recently. We call them movement management days, okay? We provide an opportunity for someone to, within a span of really 1 weekend, they can enroll in STARS, and they can participate in the initial trainings that they need to be designated at a Star 1 level. And when we host these fairs, now we're limited as to how many we can do budget-wise during the year, but the trainings are all free. They are free once someone enrolls and takes advantage of when these are held. And it's over a span of a Friday evening and an all-day Saturday. So that's one of the things that we found has been very successful. Plus, through our work in the field, it's primarily, we all play a part in this, everyone that works for the Regional Keys, in contacting these folks to impress upon them the benefits and the importance of participating in STARS and the benefit it's going to provide for those children.
And how are these providers monitored on an ongoing basis? I mean, it's one thing to set this thing up and then you want to make sure that 6 months a year down the road, they are still meeting these criteria.
And that's part of our responsibility, because every child care provider that's once they're in the STARS system, they have to renew. Once they're designated at whatever the STAR level is, they have to either renew or move up after a certain period of time to the next STAR level. So we work with those. We have STARS managers who have a caseload within a certain territory within the 22 counties of the Northwest Regional Key, who work directly with those providers. We have technical assistants that work if they have specific needs in a certain area of their child care. We have mentors. We have a mentoring program that works with a group of these people in a cohort where they learn from one another. But basically, so if someone comes in and they're at a STAR 1 level, they have to renew. If they're going to renew their STAR 1, they're eligible for a grant that they can get, a Rising Stars grant, for their first 2 years at STAR 1. And then that grant, they are no longer eligible after receiving that grant for 2 years. Then they would be expected to move to a STAR 2. But they can remain at a STAR 1 if they're not ready to make that move yet, but they just would not get a grant. Then we work with them, and so then every year, theoretically, is when they're designated, once they get to a STAR 2, they have to have a STARS manager come in and designate them to check that they've performed all of the responsibilities.
Is there some on-site physical evaluation and observation?
Yes, exactly.
Right.
That's done once a year to make sure that they are continuing to meet those standards. And then when they get to a STAR 3 level, this is the centers. In addition to making sure they meet all of their standards every year, every other year, and this is also required of them, of the providers when they move up in a STAR level, there's what's called an environmental rating assessment that's done. And we have assessors who work throughout the state who actually come up and use a scale to rate those providers to make sure that they have a score that's needed that meets that STAR 3 level or that STAR 4 level, whatever the case would be. And provided they get that average score in their assessment and they meet all the other standards, then they are designated. And of course, the higher you go in the STAR levels, the higher the grants are for those facilities.
Right. You mentioned the learning program as being the second point of concern. What exactly are these little kids learning in the Keystone STARS program?
Well, they're learning
everything,
many things,
right.
And gross motor skills obviously are extremely important for little ones because just to be clear, child cares, we have infant toddler populations who participate in child care. We have preschoolers, which are generally children at age 3 and 4, and then even some facilities also have school agers, and there's criteria and standards for school age kids, and those are kids who would come either in the morning for a short period of time before they're picked up and go on to school, or they come after school. Parents are not home from work yet. So,
is this of a remedial nature or of a supplemental nature?
No, supplemental nature.
Okay.
Supplement, nothing remedial. We're not saying that all school-age kids can't participate in a school-age program, but there are programs that are operated within a school themselves or within a community that maybe are not considered a child care. They're not a licensed child care. But no, those are open to anyone, and they generally have specific programming and curriculum that they use for school-agers.
Now, how would a parent who has a child of, say, 2.5, 3 years old, beginning to think about school and preschool, how would they find a Keystone STARS approved daycare facility? Okay,
there's a couple of areas. The first place I would tell them to go to, there's a website called Compass, COMPASS. It's actually part of the Department of Human Services, and you can search by geographic region, by town, if you're looking for a specific thing, whether it's Head Start, private childcare, nursery, school, what have you, school age. The Compass website will direct you on where those sites are. And it will give you not only location and phone numbers. If they participate in STARS, it will have a star beside that name, depending upon what star level they would be at. Those that do not participate in STARS will not have any star beside their name. And then you could actually also go further by clicking on the site, and it will give you a history if the site of their inspections that they have to have every year, and whether or not they've ever been cited for anything. So it's a really good resource for parents who really want the full scoop on how reputable that child care is.
Well, that would be very comforting for a parent, very comforting. I mean, because let's face it, you're handing your child off to somebody for, sometimes 8, 9, 10 hours. Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the things, if I may add, Joe, that we strongly encourage from a family perspective is that, if a new parent is looking for, not sure, not only they can check Compass, but when you see where you may have an interest, go visit the site. Go visit the site, meet the director, meet the staff, bring your child, because that's vitally important that you know that your child is going to be comfortable there. And generally, first impressions really mean so much.
Yeah.
Really mean so much.
Now, Keystone Stars, as it's taken hold in more and more communities, have you seen an outreach in terms of increased community involvement with the program, and what kind of involvement are you looking for from communities? Well,
one of the things that we've done our part in trying to get the word out within our communities, working with different groups from Rotary and Kiwanis. Kiwanis is a big supporter of our program. We do outreach that way, in any way possible, getting the word out to the community, but also the providers themselves, which is a big part of their responsibility being in STARS, to do outreach with the parents, with school districts in particular, because school districts play a major part in the transition aspect of when children are going through preschool. We have to know, and the schools need to know, who are those preschoolers that are going to be coming into kindergarten?
Yeah.
How well prepared? So they provide them with, they expose them to kindergarten. They often will have a field trip. They'll go to kindergarten registration. They'll actually sometimes, depending on the school district, have the kiddos go into the kindergarten classroom on a day. And so
that'd be a great idea, because otherwise, if you think back to when you were a little kid, that's frightening.
Absolutely frightening. And it still is. It still is.
Very, very quickly, in about a minute or so that we have left, what kind of parental involvement are you looking for with Keystone Stars, other than just dropping the kid off?
Well, we are always looking for the more that we share with parents how their child is doing, and the more that we know from the parents, from the child care's perspective, about the nuances of the child, whether there's any special dietary needs, what their particular likes, dislikes are, the better prepared that they are going to be in working with those children. So we strongly encourage family engagement is such a major focus of what we do. So anything that we can do to get more parents involved and to take an interest is certainly welcome.
Thanks, John. It was good to get some definition. Thanks you very
Joe.
much. And that's our program for today. For John Pozza and the Northwest Regional Key Program for Quality Early Learning, I'm Joe Taylor. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.